For over 40 years, Grandma Evelyn, as the neighborhood knew her, had lived in the modest brick house with its sagging porch and blooming window boxes. At 78, her hands were worn but steady, her gray hair pulled into a neat bun, and her smile a constant comfort. She'd raised 3 children, 6 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren in that house, its walls filled with memories, laughter over Sunday dinners, bedtime stories, and the scent of her famous oatmeal cookies wafting through the air. Neighbors relied on her. She tutored kids in math, watched homes during vacations, and shared her garden's tomatoes with anyone who knocked. To Crestwood, she wasn't just a resident, she was family. But one crisp autumn morning, a thin white envelope slipped under her door changed everything. Evelyn sat on her faded floral couch, her hands trembling as she opened it. The words inside were stark. An eviction notice from her landlord, Mr. Harold Grayson, a property developer known for flipping houses. He claimed he intended to sell the property and demanded she vacate within 30 days. Evelyn's heart sank as she reread the letter, her eyes tracing the cold, printed words. "Where would I go?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the distant rumble of city traffic. The house wasn't just a home, it was her life, her legacy, the place where she'd mourned her husband and celebrated her family's milestones. The thought of leaving it was unthinkable when her grandson, Marcus, a 25-year-old barista with a fiery streak, stopped by that afternoon. He found Evelyn staring at the letter, her face pale. "What's this?" he asked, snatching the paper. As he read, his jaw tightened, anger flaring in his chest. "He can't do this, Grandma. You've been here forever. This is your home." Evelyn shook her head, her voice soft but resolute. "He's the landlord, Marcus. He can do what he wants." But Marcus wasn't having it. Evelyn wasn't just his grandmother. She was the neighborhood's heart, the woman who'd bandaged his scraped knees and taught half the block's kids to read. The idea of her being forced out by a profit-hungry landlord was an outrage. "We're not letting this happen quietly," Marcus said, his voice firm. He called his cousins, aunts, and uncles, rallying the family to fight. Word of the eviction notice spread like wildfire through Crestwood. By evening, neighbors gathered in Evelyn's cramped living room, their faces a mix of shock and anger. Mrs. Lopez, who lived next door and often shared Evelyn's cookies with her kids, slammed her fist on the table. "She's been here longer than any of us. This is wrong." Mr. Patel, a quiet shopkeeper down the street, nodded. "This isn't just about her house, it's about our community. If they can do this to Evelyn, who's next?" Marcus seized the moment, his mind racing with ideas. He printed flyers that read, "Save Grandma Evelyn's home," and posted them on every door and lamppost. His cousin, Lena, a social media-savvy college student, shared a heartfelt post online detailing Evelyn's decades in Crestwood and the landlord's callous notice. The post went viral, shared by neighbors, friends, and even strangers across the city, with hashtags like "Save Grandma Evelyn" and "Stop the Eviction." Comments poured in. "You can't evict Grandma. This is our neighborhood's soul." Within days, the movement grew into a groundswell. Neighbors organized a meeting at the community center, where dozens packed the room, their voices loud with resolve. A plan emerged. If the landlord wanted to evict Evelyn, they'd make it impossible to ignore. On the morning of the 30th day, when the eviction was set to take effect, Crestwood transformed into a battlefield of solidarity. Dozens of people gathered outside Evelyn's house, spilling onto the sidewalk and street, holding handmade signs scrawled with bold messages. "Homes, not profits. Protect our elderly. Grandma stays." Children waved smaller signs, their crayons bright against the gray cityscape. Marcus stood at the front, megaphone in hand, leading chants of "Evelyn stays, Evelyn stays." Evelyn, wrapped in her simple gray shawl, stepped onto her porch, her eyes brimming with tears, as the crowd roared with cheers. Her frail frame seemed to grow stronger with each voice, her hands steadying on the porch railing. Local news vans pulled up, their cameras capturing the sea of signs, and the old woman at the center of it all, her face a mix of gratitude and disbelief. The landlord, Mr. Grayson, arrived shortly after, expecting a quick eviction. Instead, he was met with a wall of people, their signs raised high, their chants echoing down the street. His polished suit and clipboard looked out of place against the raw energy of the crowd. Reporters swarmed him, microphones thrust forward, their questions sharp. "Why are you evicting a 78-year-old woman who's lived here for 40 years? Is profit worth tearing apart a community?" Grayson's face reddened, his voice defensive. "It's just business," he said, but his words faltered under the crowd's boos. The pressure was relentless. Neighbors shared stories of Evelyn's kindness, how she'd babysat their kids, shared her garden's bounty, or simply listened when life got hard. A city council member, alerted by the viral posts, arrived, her presence adding weight to the protest. Even the mayor's office called. Grayson's phone, warning that the optics of evicting a beloved grandmother were a public relations disaster. Marcus watched from the porch, his arm around Evelyn, as Grayson's confidence crumbled under the spotlight. The turning point came that afternoon. Overwhelmed by the crowd, the media, and mounting pressure from city officials, Grayson retreated. To his car, his clipboard abandoned. Hours later, a new letter arrived. Not from the landlord, but from his lawyer. The eviction notice was withdrawn, and a new lease was offered, guaranteeing Evelyn could stay in her home for as long as she wished, with no rent increase. The news spread through the crowd like a spark, igniting cheers that shook the street. Strangers hugged, neighbors cried, and children danced, their signs waving like flags of victory. Evelyn, still on her porch, wiped tears from her cheeks, her voice soft but clear. "I never knew so many people cared," she said, her words carried by the megaphone. Marcus squeezed her hand, his own eyes misty. "You're our heart, Grandma. We weren't letting you go." In the weeks that followed, Crestwood didn't return to its old rhythm. It became stronger. Neighbors, once strangers, now shared meals and stories, their bond forged in the fight for Evelyn's home. The city council passed a resolution to protect long-term tenants, inspired by Evelyn's story. Lena's social media posts continued to spread, turning Evelyn into a local legend, a symbol of what a community could do when it stood together. Grayson, chastened, avoided Crestwood, his plans to sell the property quietly shelved. Evelyn, meanwhile, went back to her routine, baking cookies, tending her garden, and tutoring kids on her porch. But now her house was more than a home. It was a monument to resilience. Every time Marcus visited, he'd see neighbors stop by, their smiles wide, their gratitude unspoken but clear. Evelyn would offer them a cookie, her hands steady, and say, "This is home." And in Crestwood, that home was proof that even the smallest voice, backed by a united community, could roar loud enough to change everything.